Hey everyone, Livy here, back with another video. This is Crescent Dreams Tarot. If you are a returner, welcome back. If you are new, hello. Once again, my name is Livy, and this is my June kind of like musings, my June wrap up of things that have gone by, gone to pass. Talking a little low because my partner is still kind of asleep. But anyways, I'm back. It's actually been a little while since I've filmed a video at the time of me filming this. I have returned from my vacation in Canada, so I have a lot to say about how June went for me. How this video is going to go is that I actually have 3 areas of focus. I'm going to start with talking about like travel related stuff that went by for me. Then in the middle, I'll have tarot, because I have a lot actually to say about tarot this month. Wow. I mean for June, and also kind of July, first week of July. So maybe I'll include that in this. And then, the last bit will be books that I read, because I actually read, I'm just counting here. I actually read 5 books in the month of June. So let's kind of get into it. Well, first off, if you didn't know, I was in Canada for a period of about 3 weeks. And, it was actually kind of nice to just be there, be away from home, especially because not to get too in depth with you guys, but the beginning of my month of June was not great. I'm not gonna lie. It was not a great time. There was a lot of things at work that were going on, and things were kind of hitting the fan, as they say, to prep for the start of summer, right? Because where I work, we get off in the middle of June for summer vacation. I don't want to dive too much into that, but there was a lot of gross things going on. I was very stressed out. Not a great time. So basically, as soon as work ended, I was out. I was gone. I went on vacation to Canada. Specifically, I was in Ontario area. So and I say Ontario area because I had like one day where I was actually in Toronto, but where we were staying was my partner's sister's home, which is actually closer to like Niagara Falls, if you want to think of it that way. So it was closer to there. I was only in Toronto one day, so a lot of you gave me great suggestions, but the only thing I was able to really do during the day in Toronto was go to the Royal Ontario Museum, which was really cool, by the way. I'm gonna have to show, there was, I did do a short where I kind of showed like one of the things we were looking at, but in my community tab, I think I'm gonna put in actual like pictures of some of the things I saw while in the museum. Really cool museum. If you haven't been to it, I do recommend it. It's so big though. We only were able to get through so much. But it was a really cool museum. But while I was in Canada, it was an interesting mix. I had days where I got to basically do nothing. I was kind of just relaxing, either like reading, hanging out with their family, or like writing. I did actually get to write a little bit while I was away too, which was great. I needed to, actually start. I hadn't been able to write in a while. And that was more during the weekdays, but during the weekends, we would kind of go out and do like little day trips or like weekend trip things around the area of Ontario. So I saw places like, for those who've never been, it's basically like their more countryside area of Ontario. We were able to see places like Elora, Fergus, Stratford, Really, really cool. We also went to this town called St. Jacobs, which, by the way, was really, really cool. It was like it's one of those towns where you have like one main strip, but that main strip actually had a lot of things to do. I was like shocked. There was a lot of there was a few good places to eat. There was a nice bakery. There was definitely like a lot of clothing stores. I was really surprised. And it was just a really cool time to go on these like little day trips and to see these different places that I had not gotten to see the first time around I went. And we also went back and did some things like in Burlington. They had this like jazz music festival. Or no, it wasn't jazz. It was just like a music festival. So we got to do some of that. Really, really cool. I didn't bring back actually. Okay. I did bring back more books, which I will show near the end again of the video. But souvenirs, I didn't bring back too much. My partner kind of did, but I did not bring back as many things besides books. But I have some cool things to show for those who are like, oh yeah, you're going to do more kitchen-y stuff. It's like, yeah, I actually am. Got some cool things. I got tea. I like tea. This is distinctly tea. This was a place in Stratford that had some really nice tea. This one smelled so good. So good. This is a strawberry cream green. Also because we don't really have many green teas in our house. We're mostly black tea. But then there's also this. I don't actually... If someone knows, please tell me what's the correct way to say this. I'm going to assume I've been calling it rooibos, but I don't know if that's the correct phrasing of this tea. But this one says fruity taste of pineapple and mango with a fresh lemon touch. This also smelled really, really good. So I'm excited for both of these teas. This was a really cool tea shop, by the way. It had so many different ones. I love tea shops. But this had so many different ones. But yeah, this was in the town, it even says there, of Stratford in Canada. So if you ever have a chance to make it that way, I would recommend it. It was cool. I'll have to see how these brew though. And the other thing I was really excited about that I found in the town of St. Jacobs was this organic maple sugar. It's actually like, instead of syrup... Oh, sorry, this is where the price was. But instead of syrup, it is actually in sugar form. I have never, ever seen it. And the only ingredient, as you can see, is pure organic maple syrup. It is so cool, though. I'm obsessed with, like, different types of sugars and things, like, just to get, like, different flavorings of stuff. I have a vanilla sugar, and I've even done my own blend of cinnamon sugar. I even have honey powder, so things that are in like a similar vein. So I'm really curious to see how maple sugar works. But this was so freaking cool when I saw this that I had to pick this up. I also bought things for like my sister and my parents, just in general, you know. I got them like this cool jam, like red pepper jam, hot honey, different, like the same tea, because this tea smelled so good. I think they would have liked it, so I got them that. So other than that, though, I didn't really get anything else food kind of wise while I was on my trip. But now that I've talked a bit about Canada, and again, I think I'm going to start posting more into the community. I chose in my community page, I was going to, but then again, when you're on vacation, things kind of get like scrambled up. The only other thing actually before I move on to tarot is I know this is gonna be funny because I'm American, I guess, but when I was in Canada, instead of celebrating 4th of July, I actually celebrated Canada Day. Celebrated, I say, but it was really just a day where my partner and I were like, yeah, let's cook. And we like cooked for his relatives. I made a really good mac and cheese. That was like the hit. I was even surprised how good it was. I mean, I've made mac and cheese before. I know how to make mac and cheese, and usually I do it really good, but it came out like really good that day. I don't know why. But it was like a bacony, onion mac and cheese, really tasty. Partner made some skewers. And then we also had, ooh, what was the other thing we had? I know we had one more thing. Oh, hot dogs. Really good. So anyways, we kind of did the whole barbecue thing, but instead of celebrating it 4th of July, we did Canada Day, which is on July 1st. Anyways, though, we are already 10 minutes into this video. Let me move on to tarot because, my goodness, June was a month of a lot of tarot. A lot of tarot, like more than I've done in a while. Not to say that I don't, I guess, you know, because every month I talk about it, but not to say that I don't do tarot every month, because I do. But this is where I was actually doing a lot of different spreads for myself. And well, I guess it's technically the first week of July. I also did tarot readings for others, a lot more. So I have a lot to say about tarot. Let's talk about the decks, though, first that I use. I'm going to start by talking about the decks I used in the first half of the month because those were the ones I used the least of, and then talk about the decks I used a lot of because I not only was starting to use them before I went to Canada, but I actually used a lot of them while I was in Canada. So I'm going to start with the Tempest Tarot. The Tempest Tarot was a deck, or is a deck, not was a deck, clearly it still exists, that I used a bit of in the beginning of the month. I used it for like a week ahead spread, but to be honest, I didn't really use it beyond that. It's a very June deck, you know, it's beachy, nautical, piratey, things you would associate, I guess, with summer. But I don't know. I still have a hard time with this deck. It gave me a nice reading, but I have a hard time. I don't know. Well, you guys do know probably if you've seen my videos. I have an issue with how much white space is in this deck. I feel like part of this deck feels kind of incomplete. I wish the creator would go back and do a second edition that has more color introduced into it, because I think it needs more color. Like a lot of these images just kind of feel incomplete to me. Like they should have had more. So unfortunately, even though this is like a deck that's on par to things of my interest, like this is for instance, this is a really cool Emperor, but why is the Emperor only partially colored? I don't know. This could have been a chance to do a lot more, and it just isn't. So because of that reason, I don't always reach for this deck, but I tried to use it in the month of June, and then, like I said, it did give me a nice reading. I just don't know. I'm going to have to figure out, you know. See, this card, for instance, more colored, great. I still, though, wish that more of the details were colored in, you know what I mean? So, that's the Tempest Tarot. This is one of the decks that I used in June, in the beginning. And then, another deck I used, also on par for June, right? When people start going to the beach more, enjoying their summer, is the Ocean Tarot. This is by Taylor Bryn Holquist Todd. Again, she's that creator who has quite a few decks. She has like a cat one, a dog one, a myth and legends deck. I don't know why I'm having a hard time saying the word myth today, but myth and legends deck. And she's also just funded, I think, that Earth Tarot. She has an Earth one, but this is the Ocean Tarot. I use this deck during a very stressful time in June. So unfortunately, when I went to do my week ahead reading, this deck was actually really, really mean to me. It was kind of really mean, but it accurately predicted like a lot of the bullshit that was going on at that time. These are the really cool backs. Has a kind of smooth cardstock. Gold edging, you know, all the glitz and glam. Maybe actually instead of like showing the cards the way I was showing them, I'm just going to go like this. So this deck, like I said, I used it for 1 week during June. And like I said, it was kind of mean to me. It just, well, it's in the sense of like, it was just telling me like, hey, you know, you're kind of going to have a very hard week ahead and you just kind of need to know that that's going to happen. It was kind of one of those things, but it made me very like, you know, very sad. And because of that reason, I didn't pick it up again, but also just because I was going to travel. So did not pick it up again. Beautiful imagery as usual though. Very on par with the summer feels or the start of summer feels, you know, because it has ocean-y stuff with it. But again, I used it like for the spread I needed to use it. And then I was going through some times, so I didn't pick it up again, you know. Which is fine because, as I'm going to talk about soon, I did pick up some other decks a lot more and used them pretty much the majority of the month. But this one, even though very on par for summer, I just used it once and kind of let it be. Maybe I'll pick it back up. I don't know. I don't know when. I have a different plan for August and July, so I don't know when I'll pick this up again. But it was nice, I guess. Except for the fact that it was mean. But I do like the artwork a lot. And it is like the best ocean theme deck of... By comparing it to Tempest Tarot, I do prefer this artwork much more. Okay, so that was the Ocean Tarot. Now, during the month of June, I actually used 2 different oracles because... One oracle I took with me to Canada and used it that way. But another oracle I used while I was still home, kind of giving myself those daily reads. And the one I used at home was the Earthbound Oracle. This is by School Garden or A.L. Schwartz. 48 card oracle divination. I love that this is like a pocket size. I really like the cardstock on this one. This is the same creator of the Wooden Tarot. Now, I don't have the Wooden Tarot, and to be honest, based on some of the artwork in the Wooden Tarot, I don't think it... Oh, my cat. Sorry, she's all like riled up right now. I don't know. Because of the artwork in the Wooden Tarot, I don't like it nearly as much as this one, the Earthbound Oracle, but I did use this deck a little bit during the month of June when I needed some daily readings before I went to Canada. The cardstock is really interesting. It's like, it springs back really well. It almost feels like it's the thinnest wood ever, but I know it's not actually wood in this. I don't know what this is, but it's really nice. It's kind of like a semi-gloss, but the images... Oh, Mocha. What are you doing? Uh-oh. I don't know where she went. But the images are drawn on wood. You can see from these. This is a really nice oracle. It's very simple. Gets kind of straight. Well, it's not straight to the point. I feel like a lot of people might think that this is a more, what's the word? It's like a more intuitive deck for sure. It has very, very interesting artwork, very thought-provoking. It does some interesting things. The keywords, though, I think are very on point for me. I'm able to understand this deck, but I feel like a lot of people might not be, and that's partially why I didn't also take it with me to Canada, because if I had tried to like, especially like based on what happened or like the readings and stuff I was able to give people actually in Canada, I don't think this would have been as beneficial. But I still love this oracle. Really great one. Really good again if you are more intuitive of a tarot reader, because some of these images are very, I don't know, they're very interesting and thought-provoking. Some of them are more simple like this. Luna obviously is just the moon. But then growth, right? There's a lot that you could say about this card. Because it's not a typical meaning of the word growth. So, yeah. So that is the Earthbound Oracle. And again, it did get some play in the month of June. It actually helped with one of the readings that I did. You guys might see that in a little bit. I'll show it in my tarot journal stuff, but I did use it. Not as much as the other one ended up being, but I did use it and it did help out a bit. So I had it for the first half of the month. Now let's talk a bit about decks that I used a lot of in the month of June. The first one, interestingly enough, was the Line Strider Tarot Mini. This is by Ciolo Thompson. She obviously does the full-size version of this Line Strider Tarot, but she also has a couple of other creations, like I believe it's called Otherkin. I think it's Otherkin Tarot. She has an oracle that's botanical themed. I don't remember the name of that one because I don't have it. But she has a few decks, and she's also the co-creator of the why am I forgetting its name? Seaborn Kipper, I believe, that I have. I think it's called Seaborn Kipper. But yeah. Line Strider Tarot Mini. This is a mini deck, Llewellyn. This deck was kind of like my deck that went in my bag, went with me kind of everywhere while I was in Canada. But this deck also, oh, by the way, these are the backs. It is a mini size. I have small hands, so, you know, it is kind of small, but it's like a good mini small. I have a deck that's like smaller than this. But anyways, this deck is really beautiful, but it does have a lot of white space. So again, not always a fan for everybody. And in the past, I've actually had issues with this deck. I've had a hard time like trying to understand it and what it was kind of trying to tell me. But what was interesting about this month was, I guess this was the month to understand this deck, because it helped me a lot. I had a couple of really great readings using this deck. I'll show it more in my, because I think I took pictures of it, so it might be in there, but in my tarot journal, there's like a couple of them, and then there's one that I kind of did for myself, but I haven't been able to like write it in, or I might not write it in. I don't know. It was very freestyle of a reading, but this deck, I don't know, we clicked this month. Very odd. I don't know what it was. It gave me really accurate, very interesting readings, I guess. There was a few, but I understood what it was like trying to get at really, really well. So me and this deck, we understand each other now. Actually worked out really well. And yeah, I was like really surprised. I don't know. Again, I've had issues with this deck in the past. I've tried to use it like different months, and I would be like, man, I don't know. Maybe this is one I need to get rid of, blah, blah, blah. I was thinking about that kind of thing. But then, no, it gave me some really accurate readings in the month of June. And to kind of highlight that, like, so this is my bloated tarot journal, very bloated. It's like, you know, as these things tend to be. But I had a really, let me see if I can find it. I had a really interesting time with this deck because I used it. Oh, here you go. Oh no, this was near the end. Oh, beginning of June. I had like a week ahead spread that just made really a lot of sense with this deck. But then I also, if it'll show up here. Nope, that was the bad week. That was that week. Okay. See, I used it to try different like different kind of like little spreads, and it gave me such like, I don't know, it was very exact in the, like, this will get me ahead, this will set me back, this is misleading me, this promises good luck kind of thing. Really helpful. And I even used it, as you can see, I even used it here for a different type of spread. This was a separating bonding one. Well, I need to get rid of, take care of, accomplish. And then I put, there it is, there's Earthbound Oracle. I use it as a clarifier for the rest of this. And here, I don't know, again, really small reading, really small spread work, but it like really, really helped me out. So in that way, Lion Strider Tarot, man, it just got me. Got me in the month of June, and I took it everywhere. So it went international. I went to Canada. As a result, though, my tuck box for this deck is getting kind of trashed. I don't know what to do. Maybe I'll have to get I think it's, isn't it Peggy Papez who does the little boxes? Maybe I'll have to get one of those to protect this, because this tuck box is getting all beat up from being in my bag, being my travel deck for the month of June. And I really enjoyed this one. Yeah. So, other decks I use in the month of June, again, mostly talking about like near the end of June, but I also used the Roots and Wings Oracle. This is the mini version, or I don't know if they call it, I don't think it's called the pocket edition. I don't remember. Let me see what this little pamphlet says. Nope, never mind. Does not give me a difference. Okay. But this is the mini version of this deck. There's a full-size version. I have the miniature. I also have what's called the Imperfects edition. So this deck was like more than half the price off of what it normally goes for, even in the small version. It has really interesting... The cardstock is really gloss smooth. It's not like so glossy where if I put it 100% in the light, you can't see the cards, because obviously you can. But it is glossy, kind of. So it's not like a... I think the full version of this deck is rose petal finish. This is not, though. And as you can... I don't know if you can tell, but this cardstock is very thin. So if you were a riffle shuffler and you have this version of the deck, this would be very easy for you to shuffle. I am not a riffle shuffler, so it doesn't really matter, but I have this. This deck is so beautiful. I was waiting to use this deck, but for some reason, it was calling out to me for this time of year, I guess, like summer. It gave me very summer camping vibes, and so that's why I kind of waited to use this deck. The artwork is stunning. It's, you know, it's watercolor. Has really great keywords, I think, that act kind of like as titles too, like crafty for the fox. The worker, very clearly, you know, understanding. Oh, sorry, this is B for those who don't like bugs. Held, right? It has some great keywords there. And this deck did work in some spreads that I did also. I did a spread that comes with this deck called the Garden Spread. I tried it out in the month of June, and it was really, really, really nice to have used. I I guess I'll tie it into this video because otherwise I don't know where else to put it. But in the last week I was in Canada, which was basically the first week of July. I also used this deck to read for other people, and it was a hit. People really liked the artwork on this. It was, I mean, it's very beautiful, right? And it went so well with the readings that were going on. I paired this deck with the next deck I'm going to talk about after this one, and they were really nice together, even though this deck has a lot of white space, but even the white space means that it can go with a lot of other decks, you know, that utilize it, like even the Line Strider, which I could have put together, but I didn't try it this month, interestingly. But the Roots and Wings was just really nice. It gave people exactly what they needed to hear, which is always nice, you know? And it just, again, it's just stunning. Really good. It just gave the right vibes that people needed. And for that, I'm thankful for it and what it was able to accomplish, you know? It did its job, and it did its job in a very nice way. So my vibes from this deck that I've learned, because I used it so much this month and finally got to like try it out, is that this deck is very good at like telling you exactly what you do need to hear, but it tells you it very nicely. I'm not going to say it's like a completely gentle, but it is in that more like, I don't know where to put that, like kind of like King of Cups space, somewhere between King of Cups and King of Swords and how it treats people. But yeah, it was really nice. So the Roots and Wings Oracle was a big hit. Hit with me, hit with the people who got readings with it. And it paired actually really nicely. Maybe I should show that. I'll show it on camera. Oop. Oh no, my bag's getting all jacked up here. But it paired really well with this one. This is, of course, if you don't know, this is the Northern Animal Tarot. Yes, I took this to Canada with me. Very, very fitting, no, right? Because this deck, if you don't know, is made by a Canadian creator. And so that was also cool. Like the Canadians who were there were like, oh, very nice, right? This is the 3rd edition. I have technically what's called an imperfect edition, so it was slightly cheaper for me because this tuck box is a little, it's a little janky. It's gotten a little more beat up since I've gotten it, but it was pretty much kind of like that. Has this really nice sticker, so I actually opened it up from the bottom just so I don't have to rip that open. I've talked about this deck a lot on my channel already. It is one of those that I really, I just love it. Ever since I've gotten it, I have not regretted buying it, you know. You know, it was a little pricey for me only because it was coming in from Canada. And it's a chunky deck. As you can see, it has, I think if you take out the extra cards, it's technically 97 cards in here. Because she has a lot, the creator has a lot of extras, right? So they act almost like oracles or like extra cards of the tarot. I've talked about this in my extras video too. This deck did so much amazing workhorse kind of things for me. Not only during the month of June, because I did use this deck for some week ahead spreads for myself, but it also worked in that first week of July where, guess what, guys? So I did quite a lot of tarot readings for my partner and his family, right? When they found out that, you know, I do tarot, they were actually very excited. And they all wanted readings. And I was like, oh, okay. It was kind of one of those things. I was just like, oh, well, I guess this is happening. This is not the first time I've read for others, by the way. So it wasn't like I was thrown into the deep end or anything. See this one, the extra cards. I wasn't really thrown into the deep end with that. It just had been a while. So the first time even that I, The first time even, the first reading I did, because I did like, by the way, I did like, I read for 5 people in one day. Yeah, that was a new record for me. But because I was reading, so much. The first reading I did, because I was like a little nervous. I didn't know what he was gonna think, the person I was reading for. I was a little nervous. Like, I even noticed, like, when I was trying to shuffle and like prep, I was like, my hands were slightly shaking. But then after that, like, I kind of calmed down, and I flowed. I went back into how I normally am able to do tarot, and it worked out really well. This deck was so good for people. What was really interesting is, like, it told people exactly what they needed to hear, but I feel like it did it in a very kind way. Or maybe that's the way I read the cards for others, because some of them got, like, some of the typical scary cards you see, like the devil or death or the tower. My cat's crying again. Mocha, you're gonna be fine. They got some of those cards. But this deck is just so beautiful and gentle in the way that it delivers things. I wouldn't say, again, it's not one of those like too mushy of a deck where it's just telling you nice things, because it told people things that they were like, whoa, this is like scary accurate, of like how they're actually feeling at the time. So it wasn't that it was completely hugging. It just said it in a way that was very kind for them to admit, right? Like, oh yeah, that really is kind of like where I'm at right now. So in that way, this deck worked so great. So great. It read for 5 people. And this is kind of one of those decks that is great to read with for others, if you were wondering about that, because obviously, as you can see, it's animals. And besides these extra cards here, though, this is a Rider-Waite-Smith clone. Mocha, seriously, girl? Seriously. She is upsetty spaghetti right now. I don't know what's going on. So, in that vein, it was really good. This is more traditional, and it was a bigger size. I did give people a choice because I had the line strider with me. I did give people a choice if they wanted a reading with this or with this, and all of them picked this one because they were, more normal tarot size, and also just because it was, it's a beautiful deck. As you can see here, look at the star card. Beautiful. So this read really well for 5 different people and me during the month of June. And by the way, it was really, June, and this was the first week of July when I did these readings. So I guess I'm shoving a little bit of July into this video. Did not regret it. Felt very exhilarated. Felt very satisfied in the sense of I gave people accurate readings. I gave people good readings, and I left them feeling a sigh of relief. And that's what should happen. By the way, if you've never given a reading for somebody else, that is the one thing you want to do. They should never leave you feeling like they have more questions than answers. It should be very clear what can happen for them, right? So I was just really glad that I was able to do that for so many people. And that this deck was the workhorse, right? Really pulled through and did a lot for, a lot of people. So yeah, Northern Animal Tarot. I don't know if she's doing, so this creator is interesting. She does really small batches of selling for this deck. I don't know when her next batch is going to be, but if you want to follow her along, definitely follow her along. It's Wilderheart, where is it here? Yeah, Wilderheart Studios. Wilderheart, sorry. She does, I only know this because I ordered this deck. It's kind of sneaky. She is trying to prep a different deck that is all magical creature based. So if you don't care as much for animals, but you really like the art style of this deck, definitely keep an eye out for that other one as it comes out, okay? Anyways, that's all tarot. I know. I did a lot of tarot during the month of June. I talked about it for so long. But now I have a very interesting way of going about this next thing. So I read I read 5 books during the month of June. But I also picked up a lot more books than I should have picked up when I went to Canada. It made my bags very heavy. And that's because, unfortunately, so let me first talk about the books that I read more in the start of June than the end of June. So during the start of June, before I even went on my trip, I read 3 books here, okay? I read Bloodmarked by Tracy Dion, The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, and then I read a very good classic, this is Howls Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. My goodness, very mixed opinions about all these. So actually I'm going to start with Bloodmarked because oh my goodness. So, for those of you who don't know Bloodmarked, maybe I should actually zoom out a little bit for this. Sorry, jutting out. You see my printer, you'll see my partner's record player. Sorry about that, but it is what it is. I just want to make it easier for you guys to see this book. So, Bloodmarked. As it says here, it is book 2 in the Legendborn cycle. And how do I even begin with this book? I read the first book, which it was actually titled Legendborn. Technically it's a King Arthur retelling of in modern times with our main character, Bree. She, kind of spoilers, sorry, but it makes sense more for this second book when it became revealed in the first one that she is the descendant of King Arthur. And all these people in this book, like most of them, are descendants of King Arthur. It kind of talks about here, it's kind of blurry, but I'll kind of read the synopsis of this a little bit. So this is a second book though, but it says, all Bree wanted was to uncover the truth behind her mother's death. So she infiltrated the Legendborn Order, a secret society descended from King Arthur's knights, only to discover her own ancestral power. Now Bree has become someone new, a medium, a bloodcrafter, a scion. So this is kind of a summary of what happened in book 1. But in book 2, there's a lot of stuff where basically her boyfriend at the time, Nick, was like kidnapped. There's this whole thing about that. And then she's kind of on the run herself from, at first it's the forces of darkness, but then you learn it's like the actual society that she was a part of or tried to join. She was mostly after them. It's very confusing and convoluted. But to not give any more kind of spoilers to the series, my basic thought on this one is that this book was not as good at all compared to book 1, okay? And I'll zoom in again, sorry, going back into this. This book, though, was not as good as book 1. And the reason why is that the author made some really interesting, I guess that's the best way to put it, interesting choices for the main character, Bree, that I did not 100% agree with, okay? They were just not... There was just a lot of like really ridiculous moments that I was just like, what the hell? Is this the same character that I read in the first book? I'm really confused about what's happening. And I think it's because the main character in the second one became very wishy-washy. Like her opinion of things kept changing a lot and not in a great way. And also like there was a couple questionable scenarios that I was just like, I don't think you should have done it that way. Also, what kind of made me annoyed kind of with this book is that I feel like a lot of this book had 2 different stories going on, and she kind of needed to pick just one of them. Because the way that she set up the character made it so that I personally felt like, I don't know how to explain this. So I've actually studied King Arthur legends in college, right? Like that was a part of my English major being, is I had a whole semester worth of where we just studied King Arthur related topics and the old myths and the old stuff, right? Because of that, I got this weird impression from this book. The way that she wrote, especially things surrounding King Arthur himself, it almost seemed like the author hated the King Arthur stuff, which is then makes me pause and think, okay, if you don't like King Arthur, why did you base a whole trilogy off of King Arthur? You know what I mean? Like, it was just the choices that she made surrounding King Arthur that I did not agree with at all. I thought it was kind of awful, to be honest. So, very mixed thoughts about if I would pick up book 3. I don't know when the hell even book 3 is supposed to come out, but really mixed thoughts on if I want to pick it up, because this book was not great compared to the first one, just at all. So would I recommend picking this series up? I don't know, to be honest. I think the first book is really nice. It did some interesting things, had some great commentary, but then it kind of lost me with this one. So I don't know. Think of it what you will, but I was very confused by this book. And if I had to give it a star rating, by the way, I would probably put this close to like 2.5, maybe 3. It wasn't the worst book I ever read. It was just, I was not a fan of the choices made and the characters overall, like what they were doing. So yeah. So that was Bloodmarked. Next up in the month of June, I read Howls Moving Castle, and oh my god, I am so glad I finally read this book for the first time. I have been a fan of the Studio Ghibli version of this movie for so long. And if you don't know the story of Howl's Moving Castle, I can read a little bit of the synopsis here, but basically it follows our main character, Sophie. And in this book, it says that she's had the great misfortune of being the eldest of 3 daughters, destined to fail miserably should she ever leave home to seek her fate. But when she unwittingly, I cannot talk today, but yeah, attracts the ire of the Witch of the Waste, Sophie finds herself under a horrid spell that transforms her into an old lady. So her only chance at breaking it lies in the ever-moving castle in the hills, the wizard Howl's castle. So to untangle the enchantment, Sophie must handle the heartless Howl, strike a bargain with the fire demon, and meet the Witch of the Waste head on. So this book, for those who are wondering, is this book similar to the movie? Yes and no. I understand now. People always talked about that because I had a lot of people who had read this book and said, oh, this book is so good, but it's not like the movie at all. And I was like, wait, what? It is actually similar. There are, like, the first half of the book especially is pretty spot on to, in my opinion, to what happens in the movie. There are some interesting differences though. Like, the movie doesn't really dive in as much to Sophie's family, but the book obviously does. And the book also dives into Howl's family, which is not talked about at all in the movie. There's also some interesting differences of like how the plot goes, because the Witch of the Waste really is the villain in this one, whereas in the movie, she's not so much. And I don't want to, if you haven't read either read this book or watched the movie, I do recommend watching the movie first, because I think how do I explain this? It made it so that when I read the book, I appreciated it. But this was a really, really well done book. There was a scene in here too where I was literally cackling. Like, it happened and I was just like laughing out loud about the things that were happening. It's like really funny, like humor, kind of on par to what you would almost expect of Terry Pratchett, but it had a more serious side to it that really made this like, you know, Diana Wynne-Jones's like book, you know. So I would highly recommend this one. This was a 5-star read for me. Howl's Moving Castle, I'm so glad I finally read the book. It is good. It is different in some ways from the movie, so if you're expecting an exact copy, it is not that. But I think it does a brilliant job. I did not mind how it ended at all. I thought it was really intriguing. And it had some interesting stuff to say. So this is a really good one, and I do recommend it. Next up in the month of June, I read... Oof, I don't know if you guys will be able to see this. Maybe I'll have to hold this and show you. Okay, this is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. This book is so nice. It is what's it called? It's in 1001 Nights retelling. I would say someone probably say it's mostly Aladdin, like it's mostly like an Aladdin retelling. But it does cover things like the 40 Thieves and Jinn and all that stuff that is tied to to those myths. But this was a nice one. This is the first in a series. I don't actually know how many books are expected to be in this one, but I do know it's going to have a second one. I really liked it. I liked the characters the most. I feel like the characters were really good, but to read a little bit of the synopsis, it says, Luli al-Nazari is the Midnight Merchant, a criminal who, with the help of her Jinn bodyguard, hunts and sells illegal magic, okay? When she saves the life of a cowardly prince, she draws the attention of his powerful father, the Sultan, who blackmails her into finding an ancient lamp that has the power to revive the barren land at the cost of sacrificing all Jinn. So it dives into that. There's a lot of like human and Jinn conflicts, but I think the strongest part of the story for me was kind of, well, okay, not 100%, but it was the development of the characters a bit, and it just had some really crazy scenes that happened that I was like, whoa, oh my goodness, like this is this is a lot. I do like this. For some reason, this wasn't a 5-star read for me, because I think it's mainly just because some of the choices that were made for some of the characters, I don't know if I liked it 100%, or there was like a point where I was kind of like, wait a second, what's happening here? So this isn't 100% a 5-star read for me, but this is solidly a 4 to 4.5. This is really good. I'm just curious to see what's going to happen next in the series, and that'll probably solidify more of my feelings. But this one's a good one, especially if you're looking again for kind of like an Aladdin retelling. And my goodness, Mocha, you are very, 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 very sad right now. I don't know what's happening. Okay. These two, I'm going to talk about these quickly. So, because this video I just realized is really freaking long. Holy crap. I guess I have a lot to say about June. I'll put these all both together. These are the last two books I read in June. The first one is Squire by Sarah Alfagi. Oh my goodness, I hope I didn't. Alfagi, probably, maybe? I don't know. I'm so bad at this. I'm so sorry for butchering that name. Please someone tell me how to say that correctly. And Nadia Shamas. This is a graphic novel. This is called Mocha. I'm so sorry. This is called Squire. This is a story about, as it says here, the main character is, she's kind of seen as a second-class citizen, but she wants to really be a knight. So there's knights that are like, they're like protectors of the realm, doing some good things, but you find out later on that they're not as great as they seem, the knights. She has to learn this for herself, but she was living in a very like kind of poor situation at first. So she trains really hard to become a knight to try to better herself. Really beautiful art, as you can see, like really, really great. I read this pretty quick though. I think it was like a day and a half at most. It doesn't take me long to read graphic novels, but this is a good one. I would put this in a 4-star thing. The only reason why I wouldn't put this higher is because I do think it could have explained a little bit more some of what was going on in the background more. Like there was an opportunity lost there, if that makes sense. But really great as is. And finally, the last book I read during the month of June was The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. This book, or this author, you guys might be familiar with because, yes, she is the author of To All the Boys I've Loved Before. That book obviously became a Netflix movie. All three of those in that series became a movie. This one also became a show, apparently. I think it's on, I don't know if it's on Amazon or Apple. It's one of those. It became a show. But this book, I have to say, I wasn't 100% a fan of this book. I think I read it like in the span of a day, like a full 24 hours or less, or maybe a little more. I don't know. I was not as much of a fan of this one. Not gonna lie. I read it really quick because the chapters are like really short and there's a lot of them. So it was easy to read. But I think the reason why I didn't like this one very much is because there was a lot of things that fell flat here. And by the way, for those who are curious, this was actually the first YA book the author published. So this was the first YA. This came before this one. And unfortunately, you can really tell that it came before this one because there was a lot of craft things here, like writing craft that felt underdeveloped. The main character, I feel like you got a sense of who she was, but I didn't like her very much at all. She was really kind of bratty. And her name, like her nickname, her actual name was supposed to be Isabel, but everyone in the world called her Belly. Belly, are you kidding me? Like, that's the worst character name you could ever have. I mean, there was a point where even the character talked about how she hated the nickname Belly, but it kind of like stuck. But it was so awful. And there is a love triangle involved in this, but I don't think either of those boys were very developed well. I don't know. There was a lot of underwhelming character development. And I feel like the plot that was underneath it of like tension within some of the people involved in like their family dynamics, that made a more compelling story than the apparent romance that was in here. It wasn't really even a romance. I don't know. I wouldn't have called it a romance. Like, I don't understand how any of these characters were actually showing like feelings for each other except for the main character because we were stuck in her head. But it didn't really make me excited to keep going with this, to be honest. I probably won't, even though there's 2 more. I would be curious to see what the show adaptation of this book is. I wonder if it would make it better because, again, there was just parts of this book that felt really flat to me. So I would also put this book in the sphere of 2.5 or 3 stars. But it's not like the writing itself was completely bad, but there was some parts that I was like, this is kind of cringe. I don't know. I didn't enjoy it as much. And I read a lot of YA, so I'm like, what the hell? But is what it is. And yeah, this video is getting way too long already. So I'm just going to finish by saying these are books I bought while I was in Canada, but I haven't read them yet, except this one. This is a book I'll talk more about in July. I'm already a little bit more than a third of the way through of it. I bought these. This is a cake book. I know I shouldn't have bought it, but this is going to inspire me for my birthday cake this month in July. So I'm very excited. But yeah, a lot of books. And as you can see, a lot of everything. I talked a lot. Jesus. If you guys, though, have stuck around this long, thank you for watching. I'm going to leave before my cat freaks out anymore because she's crying a lot. So I will see you all again next time. Bye.